I often get asked about the Cuban factor, and in fact, since I live in Arizona, when I first discovered the NAEP scores of Florida's Hispanics outscoring the statewide average for all students in Arizona, I was working at the Goldwater Institute at the time. I started writing, we had these blast emails that we would send out, and it was like, wow, look at this! Florida's Hispanic students are outscoring the statewide average for all students in Arizona. They must be doing something right, we must be doing something wrong, right? I got an avalanche of email back at me, right? Ladner, you don't understand. Cubans are rich Republicans, blah, 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 right? Now, my grandfather actually used to own a house in the Keys, so I knew better, right? I'd seen whole families of these rich Republicans knocking on our doors wanting to clean our house for $20. Republicans? Yes. Rich? Are there rich Republicans? Yes. They exist. Okay. So I started digging into the data. The 2000 census, 30% of Hispanics in Florida were Cubans, and that number is going down. There was a large influx of Mexicans, Central Americans into Florida. Of course, now Florida does have a unique Hispanic, mixture, no doubt about that. Miami is very international, etc., but still. The bottom line is that so I went into numbers and I said, well, what if we only run free and reduced lunch eligible Hispanics? Still outscore the statewide average for all students in Arizona. And then when I wanted to get really mean, I ran the number for free lunch eligible Hispanics. Now, free lunch, to be eligible for a free lunch, you have to have a annual income for a family of four that's below $26,000, like really poor, right? Still beat the statewide average for all students in Arizona. So more recently, I was actually able to super geek out and get into the data and find origin, right? Hispanic, what kind of Hispanic are you? It's actually in there. I didn't know it until years later. When you exclude the Cubans do score a little better than other Hispanics in Florida, but it's not a big difference. And
the teachers, and then with the professionals who ran the teacher union.
I actually met the head lobbyist of the Florida Education Association a few months ago. He more or less told me in a public forum that, yeah, we opposed all this stuff, but the thing is that we deserve some of the credit for these gains too. Now, I think that's true for the teachers. The teachers do deserve a lot of credit for these gains. I would not, however, extend that credit to the teacher unions since they were completely, utterly, religiously opposed to all this stuff. So, the sad reality is that I think that the FEA would undo all of this stuff if they got the chance. But there's another one, which is kind of radically decentralized, right? Digital learning, for instance, right? Parental choice, charter schools, right? I mean, that's kind of the opposite direction, where with charter schools, you allow educators and people who think they can go and build a better school to go out and do it, right? So there is this tension between kind of centralization reforms and decentralization reforms. I do think, however, it's possible to support both of them. I support both of them. Now, not necessarily an ideal world, but from the standpoint of, we're here now and we'd like to get better, I'm convinced that things like clear school grading is a good thing to do, right? Because it actually informs parents to make better decentralized choices, right? Overall, I would prefer a very decentralized system. And I think that the most interesting thing about ed reform that started over the last 5 years, you saw, a couple of years ago, you saw Al Sharpton and Newt Gingrich going around the country campaigning for ed reform. President Obama appeared on stage with Governor Bush, former Governor Bush, in Miami. The Obama administration has clearly chosen to align itself with more reform-minded elements on the K-12 policy rather than the unions. It doesn't mean that they're slapping the unions in the face or anything like that, but for instance, if you look at the race to top competition that they had for stakes. Getting rid of charter caps was something you got bonus points for, right? So was creating teacher evaluation systems that included the measurement of student learning gains, which is something the teacher unions don't want. Is if you're spending $17,000 a pupil, why don't you have reading? I mean, I would get rid of anything before I got rid of a third grade reading specialist. Anything. I'd like make the kids do the janitorial work. I'd do anything, right? Like, and we run into this problem in Arizona because we put in this retention law, but it's being phased in, and the districts, because of the downturn, you know, they came to me and said, "You can't do this to us. We're firing our reading specialists." And my reaction was like, "Well, then you don't get it, right? I mean, if you're going to prioritize your spending, that's not the first cut you make, right? It's just not. It's the last cut you make, you know." So look, and when I showed you those charts earlier about, you know, look, about half the people in the school system today are not teachers. Okay, it's about 1 to 1. You have to have some non-teachers to run the school system, right? And if you want to call a third grade reading specialist a non-teacher, I want them, right? So I mean, but yeah, I mean, it shows a lack of the priority that we have for outcomes when you see schools getting rid of third grade reading specialists. You know, the problems that we have in education were not made overnight, and they're not going to go away overnight. But the good thing about today is that it's mostly in the charter school sector. We actually do have people actively trying to build better school models. That didn't exist 20 years ago, right? I mean, all basically, we had private schools, you had public schools were basically all, you know, I mean, and now the level of specialization, the number of people trying new things, the interests of venture capitalists are starting to get in there. It's not going to happen overnight, and change doesn't come quickly or easily, but I'd be willing to bet any amount of money that 100 years from now, the schools will look very different than they